we're building JWST to work from day one, and it's ground testing and all the work that we do in looking at what components go into it and how they will perform over the lifetime of the mission are key components. So we're basically building it to last. Now, that said, the administrator, Michael Griffin, has directed us to put a hook on the spacecraft bus so that at some time in the future, the telescope could be recovered, or, were someone able to get a mission out to that L2 point, they could essentially capture the telescope. But just to re-emphasize, we are building this telescope to work from day one, and when you build them to work that way, there's a whole additional set of design problems. You have to test components for the full lifetime. You have to make sure things work in the environment that you're going to be flying them for the number of years you're going to be flying them. So you could think of that as additional, at some level, additional cost. Always comes with a mission where you're not able to get to it and do this kind of stuff. I guess in answer to the second part of the question, I really couldn't speak to that, I'm afraid. First of all, it's way too soon, and reading tea leaves is not very easy. So.
Bene, ci stanno seguendo anche da un'altra sala e quindi ora do la parola a loro. Se c'è qualche domanda ci alterniamo.
Io vorrei chiedere come una così costosa e sofisticata struttura posta nello spazio verrà protetta dagli oggetti che sicuramente dovrebbero passare nelle vicinanze. Qual è la probabilità che qualcuno di questi vada a urtare il nostro telescopio? Grazie.
Okay, so the question was, what is the possibility of a collision with micrometeoroids or particles with the telescope? So we have very detailed models which explain, based on data that's come back from previous missions, what the environment is like at the place that we're going to, which is L2, and there have been several other NASA missions, and a lot of people do their research in this area. So when we design our mirrors and our sun shields, we build into those designs the ability to survive micrometeoroid hits to a certain level. And so in the case of the mirrors, part of our stray light specification includes a component that's assigned to micrometeoroid hits. And in the case of the sun shield, we've actually spent a lot of time firing simulated micrometeoroids into sun shield material to see what would happen. And as you saw, the sun shield is 5 layers, but we really only need 3. The 5 layers give you that extra margin, so micrometeoroids can pass through them, and you have the additional thermal margin that you need to still be able to get to the temperature you need at the end of your lifetime. So basically, we include our understanding of that environment in the design of the telescope.
Laggiù.
Volevo chiedere quale utilità queste scoperte così costose e complicate possono avere su di noi comuni mortali?
Okay, let me answer that by talking about what I tell my or tell audiences in the United States when they say, why should we fund the space program? So what benefits does JWST bring to us? Well, first of all, mankind has always been interested in astronomy, and it's one of those sciences that have always engaged people, and people have always wanted to know what they're looking at and what's beyond that, and how did those things come to be. So that's one aspect. People want to understand where they came from in terms of how the universe formed, and people also want to know if there's other life out there. Are there other planets? What's on those planets? Do they have the kind of atmospheres that might support life. So people have a lot of questions, even the general public, certainly in the area of astronomy. And it's a very engaging science that people can connect with. But beyond that, science and astronomy in particular is always in need of, sort of transfer to the younger generation. And astronomy is extremely good in engaging young kids at a very early age in getting involved in science, understanding science, and basically getting an education in science and understanding how it influences their life every day. So there's also a very important educational aspect. And certainly on big projects like this in the United States, we have to spend some fraction of our budget on these kind of outreach things, connecting with kids in schools, explaining the science behind these observations to them. And then finally, every time you build something like this, you have to do a lot of new technological development, and that flows into industry and has a lot of significant benefits. Allows you to do other things next time. So we have developed a number of new technologies along the path for JWST that will be very important for composites, for understanding how to make high-quality optics, all sorts of things. How to make very high-quality infrared sensors, which have a multitude of applications. So there's a lot of benefits from these kind of programs.
Una domanda dall'altra sala. Se non c'è, procediamo allora con un'altra cosa.
Okay, let me start by just making the graph on the vertical axis showed the size of the star, and then on the horizontal axis it showed the separation between the planet and the star. So that's one thing. The habitable zone is kind of one of those things astronomers make up because they can't come up with something better at the time, and there's still a lot of debate about how significant is the statement that you expect to find life in the habitable zone. Indeed, on our own planet, we find life and have been finding life in areas that people 2 generations ago would never have thought were possible. So there's always that caveat in talking about the habitable zone. To go further in studying planets in that zone, you really need to start getting into the regime where you can image the planets directly, and that's certainly beyond the capability of the JWST to image terrestrial planets directly, and that will need a future mission. And there's a lot of work going on in the US and in Europe to decide what's the best technology for doing that measurement. And it's very hard because if you look at our system, Earth is something like 10 billion times fainter than the Sun, and it's extremely close to the Sun. So you need extremely large mirrors, beyond what we have for JWST. And you also need a very efficient method to be able to take that image. And the reason is because even very good mirrors scatter so much light that it completely washes out the signal from your terrestrial planet. So we're still a long way from having, I say a long way, we're working very hard in both sides of the world trying to understand how to do that measurement, but we haven't got there yet. And it will need, a very sophisticated space mission after JWST to be able to make any further progress there.
Prego.
Io mi riferisco all'eterno dilemma che è quello di spazio e tempo. Noi, mandando questo telescopio, abbiamo delle dimensioni che in qualche modo vengono noi conosciamo la fisica della luce, la rifrazione, quindi questo telescopio in termini di trasmissione di grandezze diciamo, trasmette delle immagini in termini così terrestri di uguale spazialità, di uguale grandezza. E la seconda domanda è la temporalità, cioè in quanti anni noi riusciamo a cogliere, a quale epoca si riferisce l'immagine che il telescopio ci trasmette in termini di tempo.
Okay. So I think what you're asking me is how long does it take to take one of these images? So we think that to do the first light problem, to take a set of images that will have enough objects in it for us to be able to find one of these first light galaxies, will probably take several months. And that several months is broken into taking images in different colored filters and then building them up into these final single images that you see as in the same way that you see the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. So just to do the first part of the program is going to be several months. And then there's the follow-up. Once you have your candidates, you want to go explore them. And that's probably going to take at least another 6 months to do very careful spectroscopy and follow-up imaging in the mid-infrared. So it's going to take a long time to do this. Now, the lifetime of this mission is nominally 5 years. And the way we set the lifetime is we have the baseline lifetime, which is 5 years, and the mission goal, which is 10. So this telescope should hopefully operate for at least 10 years. And during that time, we'll have enough time to do that science problem and address some of these others as well. And the science will be done the same way that the Hubble Space Telescope and the Spitzer Telescope do their programs. Essentially, we ask the community for proposals. People submit proposals, and then they're peer-reviewed, and the best ones that people think will do the best science are taken, and they're the ones that are scheduled for time on the telescope.
Una domanda dall'altra sala?
Okay, I'm actually not sure what the energy is required from an Ariane 5 to get the thing into orbit. It certainly needs several hundreds of watts to keep it operating on its solar panels once it's in space. I think that was it. Was there anything else? A question? Dark energy. The other question was, can we do dark energy with this telescope? And I think the answer to that is, to do the dark energy problem, one needs to do surveys, and you need to do extremely wide field surveys with either three of the techniques that people are proposing. And James Webb is really designed to do the first light problem, not the survey problem. Now, we will do things like looking for supernova as we take our images, but we're not going to be addressing the dark energy problem. And in fact, both in Europe and in the United States, in Europe it's called Euclid, in the States it's called JDEM, there are concepts being looked at for a dedicated mission to do the dark energy problem. As far as controlling the telescope, essentially we use what's called the Deep Space Network. That network's used to operate satellites that are long way out, and we do it basically by doing one contact a day to download the data collected. And we work this telescope in much the same way that we do with Hubble. We upload what's called a calendar, and it just sits there doing the observations on the calendar and saving the data. Then we contact the telescope, we download the data, and we upload the next calendar for it to work from.
Prego.